Hey guys, welcome to Life in Denver. I am Joe. This is my business partner, Monique. Today we got a cool one for you guys. We're going to give you the cost of living breakdown here in Denver, Colorado, seeing what that looks like, seeing if it's a good fit for you. Also, make sure you want to stick around to the end because we're going to give you a good comparison of what it's looking like here in comparison to some of the other big millennial cities I know a lot of you guys are looking into. So we'll check out what that looks like. All right, guys, so jumping into things in terms of what do we look like on a national average, because I feel like depending where you're coming from, it's going to be relative. So it's going to be cheap to some people, expensive to other people, right? If you're coming from California, Denver's going to look real nice. If you're coming from the Midwest, it might feel a little bit pricey, but sitting on a national average scale, Denver is going to be 12% higher on average. So that's encompassing everything. That's housing, utilities, healthcare, the whole nine. Where we sit a little bit higher specifically is the housing. Housing on a national average is 37% higher versus you will make up ground, like I was saying, on the utilities, the healthcare. So those all balance out. But just to give you guys, where we sit on a national average, that's where Denver Metro as a whole sits.
And you guys, I'm going to give Mr. Joe over here a little tough time about all the math, right? Like, okay, all these numbers, he's the math guy, I'm the history teacher, according to other videos if you've watched them. But one of the things is like, obviously, let's break it down a little bit. What does that mean for somebody that's living here? How much do I need to make to live comfortably, be able to go out and have date nights, have a good time?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of how most, financial experts will break things down, they typically will say, okay, you need 50% towards your needs, 30% towards your wants, and then 20% towards just, savings and investing for the future. So if you're going to do it like that, what you need to make on, say, a monthly basis, and this is going to be post-tax, because I feel like a lot of people will tell you pre-tax, and that always sounds great, but a lot of us, we have to pay taxes. So in terms of post-tax income, you're going to need just under $5,000 a month to live comfortably here, feel like you can still put some money aside for savings, and you're not house poor per se, right? And that's going to give you a comfortable living standard here in Denver. So on an annualized basis, that looks to be about, $59,000 a year post-tax income. You're in a great spot, and you can truly enjoy Denver Metro with really no financial worries.
All right, guys. So if you've been watching our channel, obviously you're thinking about relocating to Denver. And one of the biggest things you're going to incur when you relocate to anywhere is housing costs.
That's right, guys. So let's get into housing because I think there's really two buckets to look at. There's going to be the rental side versus the buy side. So we'll start with the rental side first, and it depends what your needs are, right? So if you're looking at just say a studio, for example, the median price for the monthly payment on a studio is pretty cheap out here. It's $1,470 a month. So that's not a bad payment. But on the upper end too, if you need some more space, so maybe a 2-bed apartment, right? That's going to be $2,309 a month. So there is a pretty big jump from when you go that studio to a 2-bed, and that's the rental piece. Now, if you want to go to the buying side, there is again really two different sides to look at. So you have the cheaper side, which will be the condos. The sales price for that on median is $355,000. So really not that bad. Versus if you look at, say, townhomes and single families, that's when you get a big jump. So that ranges from $630,000 to $690,000 for depending where you are in the metro, but just on a median sales price basis to look at those two.
Yep. And I think too, guys, when we're hearing Mr. Math over here spill out all the numbers, is just think about really what you need in terms of your living situation. If you're moving to Denver, you're relocating because of work, and you're not too sure what neighborhoods, what areas, or where you want to be located. Renting might be a good option, just because when you do buy a condo, even though like the entry price in terms of monthly payment may be similar to renting versus like buying a condo right away. I think understanding the location and understanding where you're going to be and your preference is probably the most important thing, because location, right?
Yeah, definitely. And the thing I want to call out to you, and when you are comparing, say, maybe that 2-bedroom apartment in terms of that versus the condo, just think though too, right? If maybe you do want to do a short-term rental for a couple months while you come out here, you kind of view some areas, and obviously we're happy to walk you guys through. We'll take you out, look at whatever area you want to look at. But I think it's an important consideration is just you are building equity with that condo, right? So that's the other piece. So maybe the apartment on the monthly payment is maybe a couple $100 cheaper, but in the long term, that condo is going to pay you dividends in the sense of, well, you've made these payments for a few years now, you've built some equity, and it's just, that's where you want to be in the long term. So really something to consider if you do have the money to do the condo, that would be something to definitely consider as opposed to just renting, because, renting is good. It has its perks, of course, but homeownership has a lot of perks as well. So definitely something just to call out.
Yep. And as he's mentioning home ownership, do remember, guys, that Joe and I are licensed realtors here in the state of Colorado. So any real estate needs you have, please feel free to contact us at the information that's coming up on your screen. Call, text, email, whatever the case may be. We'd love to help.
Absolutely, guys. We'd love to help. And we'd also love to run the numbers with you guys because I think that will make life so much easier for you in the sense of, hey, we'll compare that condo to that apartment that you're looking at, really see what makes sense for you and your personal situation. Maybe it is renting for the first few months. Definitely not a problem at all, but definitely something just to consider because for the long term, definitely want that equity. All right, guys. So now that we've got the most painful piece out of the way, the housing, that's where you get hit out here. Let's save you guys some money. So let's jump into utilities. Utilities on average here in Denver specifically is going to be 15% cheaper than the national average. So that's a nice savings for you guys there.
Yeah, and if you're definitely, everybody needs internet. We're in the age of internet, right? So that's definitely $60 a month.
So you're watching this video.
Yeah, exactly. So it's $60 a month roughly for internet, obviously depending on the packages you get, unless you're a big gamer over here, like using his free to game. Anything else in terms of like garbage disposal and utilities, assuming you do first move to Denver and you're looking at like a small range apartment, maybe 900 square feet.
Or a
condo, right? Do expect to pay about $180 a month. So all in between $220, $240, depending on how much AC you use, depending on how much, internet you require in order to do all your gaming. That would be an expense that I would say to definitely include.
Definitely something to call out for you guys too. So this is not including cable. So if you're a big sports fan, all that stuff, that's going to be additional. We're looking at just kind of the bare essentials. So we're looking at, heating, cooling, trash, water, and internet, obviously. So what that looks like when Monique was calling out here on saying apartment or a condo, not bad, $220 to $240 a month. And then to give you context on maybe a little bit larger area. So if you're looking at those townhomes, those single families. So I personally have a 2,000 square foot single family. That on average for say the last 6 months for me has ranged right around $400 to $420 a month. So really not bad. That's everything all included minus the cable like I called out, but there isn't a big jump. And the other thing to call out too for you guys as you're shopping for homes out here, new builds specifically are going to be very energy efficient, very good in terms of what it costs you for the electric bill every single month. That's somewhere you can save some money on the utilities as well. All right, guys, next up, everybody's favorite, taxes. So what you're gonna find is, what's cool about Colorado as a whole, it's really just the housing that's kind of painful. Everything else out here is actually kind of on par or actually a little bit below the national average. So taxes specifically, and this is a big one to consider, right? Property taxes out here, the median across the board is 0.5%. And why I call it out and why it's really important is that gets wrapped into your monthly payment out here. So although the sales price in that home might be a little bit higher, if the property tax is a little bit lower, that's going to save you a lot in terms of your actual mortgage payment. So definitely something to call out for you. So the 0.5% is really nice. The one thing I'll caveat that with though is new builds in specific, those are going to be a little bit higher just because you're in a special tax district. A lot of the time they have to bring up schools, just the general infrastructure, all those amenities come at a cost. So you will find those specifically might be a little bit higher, but even those are really only between like 1.2%, which on a national average is still pretty on par. So definitely not bad. And the other thing I'll call out too for especially you higher earners, it's really nice we have a flat tax out here. It's only 4.4% versus you'll find in other states like, and I'm always picking on California, they kind of ladder up a little bit, right? So you could get all the way up to 13% just on the state side. So you will save money on property as well as the income tax out here.
And if you are a big shopper, like Joe likes to claim that I am, do expect to pay sales tax here in Colorado.
What a perfect person to discuss this point.
Exactly, right? So when you're out shopping, throwing things in the basket, make sure that you know that you are going to be paying a sales tax. There are some states in the country where, the ticket item price that you see is the price you pay at the register. That is not the case here. You actually go and you check out and you add about 10% in additional tax. So,
yeah, that is specific to Denver though, like Monique's calling out. Right. So it's going to be about 9-10% on the sales tax in the Denver actual area, as opposed to the metro as a whole or the rest of Colorado. That's really only like 3%. So not too bad, just depends where you're going to be sitting at, but wanted to call that out for you guys.
All right, so we've given you guys context about, cost of living and your housing and all of other expenses. What about the fun things, right? Like I like going out to eat. I'm sure Joe likes going out to eat. So one of the biggest things for me is like understanding costs. If you're going to go out on a date night, for 2 people, how much is that going to cost you, right? So I'd say a little bit of a nicer end meal for 2 people would probably be around $80. And that's just assuming you're going to get an appetizer and you're going to share, unless you're Joe and stingy and want your own appetizer. And you're going to get a meal and then share a dessert, right? We like to share desserts. So it's definitely within the $80 range to kind of walk out.
Definitely. And if you aren't looking to have, the quote unquote nicer dinner, right, and you're trying to save a little bit of money, there are obviously inexpensive options as well. We looked into that. That sits at about $40, about half the cost. And that's you and your significant other going out, getting the average meal, nothing crazy, maybe not a full 3-course meal, but definitely you can still go out and enjoy a nice night out.
Leave it to Joe, right, to watch the budget and pinch them pennies.
So let me put it into perspective for you guys, right?
His wallet,
all right. There's spider webs in there. I got no cash in there. So we're going to sell some houses for you guys here. But nah. So in all reality, so in terms of if you are just going for, say, a date night out, like one of my favorites over in Lohi actually, is Kiki's Tacos. That's a nice night out. You guys can both have 3-4 tacos, get something to drink, whatever, and it's like 40 bucks out the door. And it is still, you know, a full sit-down experience and everything, but definitely you can still enjoy yourself for less than 50 bucks out here. It's very doable. All right, guys, so let's jump into, I'm sure some of the cities you're probably comparing Denver against. These are what we consider, you know, the big cities that are hot right now, the millennial cities everyone's looking into. So we'll get the more expensive stuff out of the way and then we'll jump into the fun ones, right? So if you're comparing, say, on the East Coast, I actually grew up on the East Coast. Let's look at like the Manhattan, the Boston, Miami, all those big cities, right? In comparison, when you look at Denver to Manhattan, for example, Manhattan's super expensive. It's going to be actually 104% higher. So basically double the cost of living. So if you're coming from there, like I said, Denver's going to look cheap. It's all relative. If you're looking at more like a Boston, that's of course a little bit cheaper than Manhattan. That's going to be on average about 35-36% more expensive than Denver. And then Miami is where you start getting, again, a little bit cheaper. It's only about 8% higher. So that's context. If you're on that East Coast, those are some cities you're looking into. Those are still all going to be more expensive. Yeah, definitely.
Mr. East Coast over
But
here.
clearly I live out here now. I'm a West Coast fanboy now. So Colorado's a spot. Just want to give you context in terms of what that looks like cost of living wise versus some of those eastern cities.
Right. And me, I've been born and raised in Colorado and I've never left. So I'm going to focus, of course, on more of the West. Yes, more of the West Coast cities. So like if obviously California, Joe's been picking on California all video.
Give Monique a chance
So
to pick on it.
there we go. So California is obviously going to be about 36% more expensive than
LA specifically.
LA specifically, right? Than living in Denver. See, he's even correcting me on my math now. Can't get it right.
We'll leave her to the history.
And then you also have Portland, Oregon, which is also more expensive, about 6%. So definitely, you know, depending on where you're coming from and where you're relocating from, the sticker shock could be either a good thing or a bad thing, depending on where you're coming from.
Absolutely. And I'll throw a few more your way too, just to wrap things up here too. So if you are looking on the East Coast, we'll give you some cheaper options too, right? So like a Raleigh, North Carolina, that is definitely, it's come up the last few years, but it's still cheaper than Denver, for example. So you'll find there it's going to be 12-13% cheaper on average. So that's definitely an option. I know that's a big hot city a lot of millennials are looking into, as well as like an Austin, Texas, still another good option to compare to. That's going to be on average still a little bit cheaper, like 8-9% cheaper. So not a huge variance, but just to give you an, you know, some type of an idea, if these are all cities you're kind of maybe shopping against Denver, that's where Denver sits relative to some of these other ones as well.
Right, guys, and as much as Joe and I do love doing these videos for you guys, we would love to help you with any real estate needs you may have. So if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest here in the Denver Metro, Joe and I are licensed realtors. Don't forget to contact us at the information on your screen, and we hope you found this video helpful. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell so you can stay in tune of when we update videos.
That's right, guys. We'd love to help you. We'd love to do some math together. We can hang out. Monique will do some history with you guys, but any questions you have, reach out anytime. We would love to help you with anything you got.